So I wanted to make this video. I've watched a lot of these CNA videos. I have not focused very much on EKGs, which, I'm not really sure on the EKGs. So I'm just going to have to start looking up videos and just watch like at least 20 videos where they have, the day of a life of an EKG. Given the idea that they've migrated so many different people and all this stuff that's going on, at least from what I always understood, is that the medical field is very competitive. So depending on how well of the university you go to and where you go to school, and where you're getting your training from, whether you went to the military or not, when you go into looking for a job, they'll more likely hire you. If you're bilingual, males more likely to get hired because we carry the physical attributes that is also needed in the medical field, which there's a huge diverse, crazy people, all kinds of stuff, right? To get physical, or you need to pick people up. You're more stable, you're more stronger, and you're bilingual, always helps tremendously. So whenever I was younger, I was about 16 years old. And I was 16 years old at the time. This is what they used to do. Back in the day, when I was younger, it was pretty thuggin'. It was scary. You went to downtown Dallas and you'd watch and you'd see crackheads. Like you would see crackheads and people like holding their leg and just one of their limbs and just limping across, and it's like fully clothed and looks like he just fully strung out, like on heroin or I don't know, heroin was some crack or something like. And it was even worse when I used to go with my aunt on the bus. I remember just being terrified. I remember just kind of just sort of just fisting up and thinking to myself, I gotta be ready in case somebody jumps us or somebody tries to rape us or some shit, and tries to take us on. It was like there was no cell phones at the time. But when I was 15, 16 years old, I was 16 years old when I was in rehab, and while I was in rehab at this school, at this rehabilitation center, I recall that they had everyone sign a piece of paper, and you had, if your parents agreed to it. And they did this for many years prior to me getting there. They didn't do it the year that I was there, but they were considering it. But they said they didn't, and they didn't deny it. I guess something didn't go through, or one of the teachers didn't request it. But the year prior to that, and for like the last 5 or 6 years, they had been doing this. And they had been getting 15, 16-year-old kids that were going to this rehab. It was rehabilitation. Right after you go there to school, and then after school, so you go there, they pick you up like at 6 o'clock in the morning. You don't get home until like 6, 7 o'clock, or like 6:30. So you have your 8-hour, you get to downtown, you go to school, do your education, and then after your education, you have these meetings throughout the day, yada yada. But I don't remember what the name of the rehabilitation was, but I do recall that they would get the teacher, the parents, to try to get their students, and it was like a learning lesson. The learning lesson was to show you the reality of what life really is in the real world, and hopefully it'll get you to change your outlook on life while you're young, because you don't want to be old and it's too late, or you make a really bad decision when you're young and you go to prison and you lose your life and you won't be able to fix it anymore because of all the envy and all the envious things that you thought you wanted. People forget about you, and when you're locked up for a very long time, their lives moves on, relationships, deaths, and you start to figure out a lot of components of life. You start to figure out a lot of components in life, how easy it is that you're very disposable. because most of them are not going to be your friends, connect with you anyway within the next few years to begin with, because you either have to be working on a job, or you just, if you keep messing around doing a whole bunch of bad stuff, you're not going to get anywhere in your life. And so basically, it was kind of like Scared Straight. You ever seen that? Where they do the teenager? You ever seen those 11-year-old kids where they take them Scared Straight and they take them to the penitentiaries and shit? Well, it's something like that, but this is like more harsh, like more, I wouldn't say more harsh, but more harsh in the reality of blood and guts. And they would put him in the back of a paramedic van, but the parents had to agree to it. Both parents, I don't know, one parent's, whatever it is, and they, for a whole day or something, or for like a whole week, I want to say it was more than a day, but I'm going to say for like a whole week, they don't touch, they don't participate, they just sit in the back of the van of the paramedics, and they watch of people coming through and then going into emergency. This is car wrecks, gunshots, people dying, people blood, I mean, gruesome shit. And it's a very common thing for paramedics to see. For those that you know, a lot of the basics people really kind of think what paramedics do. I still don't know, but they see a lot of horror, like firefighters. They see a lot of bad shit. They see like the car victims. They deal with more of that than the police officers do, and then with fatalities and stuff. So like, you know, when people are dying in their last moments of life, they're in the paramedics a lot of the times, and they'll let the kids watch to show them that how fragile your life really is, that it can come to an end very quickly, just like many of these people. And there's people coming in with gunshots, there's people coming in, and back in those days, guns were so popular. When I was like 9 or 10 years old, Uzis were very, very, very popular as well, where people were spraying bullets in LA and stuff like that. But that sort of gang affiliation had a pretty big prominent thing that was kind of going on in the early 90s to late 80s. At least in Dallas it did. I know other places were much worse. But I know that at 16 years old, if your parents agreed to it, they would throw you in the back of a paramedic van and you'll watch people die in real life. And, I mean, car wrecks, you know, where they're picking up, doing resuscitation techniques and whatnot. I'm not sure exactly also if they allow them to be in the ICU unit, or the ER at some point, so they can watch. Like, I know when I was there one day, this is a true story. I went, when I was about 20, I was 29 years old, and I was living in Carrollton with this guy named Marco, and it was a Webb Chapel or something. Like, it was which, what was the name of that street? It was Chapel something, Wedding Chapel or something. I don't know, something like that. But anyway, I had a little bit of blood that was coming out of my butt because they were shooting these electronic devices to make me shit. And I noticed I saw a little bit of blood. And I was like, what the fuck are these motherfuckers doing to me? And my mom's identical twin took me to the hospital. And she took me to the hospital and at Parkland, and then I went to go get checked, and this guy, you know, the doctor, so-called doctor, looked into my rectum and put his fingers in my ass, you know, and that's sort of the procedure. They put a plastic, they put your fingers in your ass, they took a look to see if there's any blood damages, anything like that, and test it for some shit, and that's what they did. And that was kind of pretty much the situation with that. And it was really messed up because I remember my mother. I didn't know it wasn't my mother. It was her twin. This is right after I got raped. You know, I'm like late 28, I think. I moved out. Yeah, it was like late 28 to 29. And I remember one of the nurses had to like check my mother's twin, and just looked at her and said, "You can go sit down right over there." And this is probably like right whenever they had to investigate shit. And they had done this because I think they have to secure everyone in their place. You have a place to seat, but you have to be firm, because now you have something that's very serious. At this point, I think they probably find out I'm HIV positive. They probably know all, but they haven't figured out a lot of answers. But I remember the lady looking. She said, "You can go sit right over there," and was like, and I remember my mother was just like sitting there, like, it was very weird. Like, she seemed sort of like maybe she kind of stepped the boundary a little bit, but still kind of was trying to keep her nose up, um, because like somebody had fueled something about this person that gave them this confidence that now you've done now you've possibly done something bad, but because someone is giving you something or a lot of money, you think you're doing good. You think you're doing good now because you got a lot of money, and that's not the case. And I'm not blaming her, and I think it's simply because of such a lack of knowledge and education. That's what I believe it is. And it's not her fault. I really don't think that it's her fault. Whoever is involved is putting it as her fault so they don't get in trouble for it. But I didn't say anything, and I just know that something was kind of fishy and wrong. Like, there was something, because I remember the nurse, the registered nurse, showed up and was like, sit down. You can go over there and sit down over there. And I don't know what the circumstances. So I'm sitting down by myself, and I'm like, I think I got out of the room, and they set me down in a chair, and my mom was way down there. Or I think my mom was sitting next to me for that moment. I don't know if it was before or after the nurse showed up. But I looked down the hall, and I don't know if I was by myself or not, but I looked down the hall, and I see this guy. This is in the ER at Parkland. And it looked like he had a chainsaw lodged into his chest. Like, I'm not kidding you. They see the craziest. Have you ever seen that? For those that know, I watched it a couple of times with like the crazy. The ER people, they see the craziest things you can't even imagine. Like, it never surpasses to the things that they see that people walk in there with. Like they'll get people with like a laptop lodged into their their left lung or some shit, some crazy shit. They'll find like a Tyco RC, little card toy lodged into the back of someone's eye, or like crazy stuff. Like, they'll find a gerbil in the rectum of a guy that was performing sexual acts on an animal. Like all kinds of crazy shit. So, but anyway, I was just, and I see this guy was covered in blood. And I want to say it looked like a chainsaw. Like, from here, and I remember there was something lodged. And I want to say it was something lodged either into his face and chest. You could see the blood. He was a pretty large guy, Mexican guy. But I remember seeing some sort of like lodged chain. Have you ever seen that chain saw? Circular cylinder. It looked like somehow it fell off its rotor and just like came lodged inside of him. And I couldn't remember if it was on the side of his face, it reached to him, or it was lodged into a huge mass. But you could see this metal circle, like looked like a saw that was just lodged into his body. And he was perfectly alert. He was alert. Like, I looked right there and I was like, holy fucking shit. I was like, damn. I was really in shock because I didn't really expect to see anything like that. And that guy just rolling in, and he was just like this, and he wasn't dead. I mean, he looked like whatever it is, the blood looked like it had dried. Like, wherever they found him, there was enough time for the blood to have stopped. He was still bleeding, but not like, it didn't look like he was just blood all over the place. It looked like some of the blood had stopped, and there was a significant amount of blood, obviously because it's a chain chainsaw blade. But anyway, I thought I'd make a video on that, and that was like a long time ago. So they see stuff like that all the time. For me, if I get a CNA, we're interested in the EKG as well, because the EKG actually work in hospitals, not nursing homes, and their position areas and where they work would be quite different. Maybe I'll go to get the CNA and the EKG, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. I may just go for dental assistant. I still haven't made a decision. I'm keeping my ideas. I don't know what's going to happen. But I thought it was important for me to talk about because it's I don't think I would work and necessarily in maybe some departments, like as a CNA. I wouldn't want to work in like a mental hospital behavior clinic. That's probably something in a place I probably wouldn't like. I probably wouldn't want to work. Not everybody that goes in there crazy is, because I've been there lots of times. Just people have bad days, or just whatever the situation may be. So it may be more easier laid back. Every environment's a little bit different. So we'll see how that goes. But would I work in a ICU unit? You gotta give it a shot. Maybe a couple, depending, because I don't know what that field of work is. I really don't know anything. I don't know if they allow you to work temporary jobs there for like a few days or whatever it may be, and I'd have to figure out a plan. Well, if I'm only going to work here and do this just for a little bit, I'm going to work here for 5 days and I'm going to tell them I'm going to quit. I got my CNA license and I learned, but I'm going to go, do something else. And I really just kind of get the whole idea of it, of just having this and see where it goes. And it'd be great to have, even when I get other jobs, it'll really be good to have on a resume that I had a CNA license in whatever job position I'm in. It's always good to have anybody that has knowledge of medical and has a certificate of that, especially CNA or anything above. But yeah, I think that sounds like a plan, and I know that it's like I've seen so many videos. I've been there 7 years in a nursing home. The whole factor of it, as well as my age, the factor of it, of the certain situations that I'm in as well. See, pretending that, why they don't let me get a girlfriend anymore, and relationships, and my age, and reality, my own mortality. When you go into a patient's room, when you go into someone's room, and you don't know who these people are, and you think about where's their family, and they don't know when comes to see them, or maybe they're too old and they already outlived everyone they've ever known. You do have a reflection of, because when you're young, you have your whole life ahead of you. When you don't have a disease and you're young and you're working in that field, you had your whole life ahead of you. I'm walking in there with a disease, a plastic anemia, and a prior bone marrow transplant patient survivor with chemotherapy, and I'm 42 years old, with the understanding that whatever it is that's going on, they're not letting me have a girlfriend because I'm infected with HIV. So I have to be not only extraordinarily careful, but the reality of my mortality. And then I'm coming in contact with people. When you're young, and I was watching people get, sick, I left it there. What made me depressed, I was never suicidal when I was young. It was the craziest thing. Even though I saw it, I was never that way, ever. In fact, my mother told me I should put a foam cord around my neck and hang myself. I remember telling her, "You stupid, you want me to kill myself? Are you fucking crazy?" And that's one of the things that I remember my mother telling me many years ago. My mother told me, I remember getting on the phone. We used to have a really long cord on our phone, old ass phone. And she said, "You should." We goes, "Why don't you go ahead and put that cord around your neck and hang yourself?" And I remember my mother saying that to me. And I started screaming at her, "Are you fucking crazy? You fucking stupid. You want me to hang myself? What the hell's wrong?" And you don't understand, this is about 2 years. I was 14 years old when she said that. 15 years old, 14 years old. And you got to understand, my mother, when my mother used to get into arguments, my mother used to always say to my father, "Atácate la medicina, atácate, ya drogate, para te sientas más bueno y te calmas." And that's like, take your drugs, just keep taking your drugs. Who cares, and get all drugged up. I don't care. You drug yourself up. And she kept on. And my dad would get mad and say, "No, no, he says ese. No, he says no. Oh, shit. No, he says." And he would act like that till he finally killed himself, till he finally overdosed on a bunch of pills. So when my mother told me that, that became a terror for me as well, understanding that now this person seems to be using this as a method to get something out of it. And that's terrified me, just the actions of that. She had said this to me a few times, but when I was younger, you watch people that already lived their lives, and you don't know what they did, especially since I was coming in contact with my father. You also understand, you don't know what they did, because a lot of people act. Okay, you have to separate the idea that they weren't monsters throughout their life. So you just give them the humanity of the existence, the benefit of the doubt, that you really didn't do too many bad things. Yeah, you had your favorites here and there or whatever, some a little bit easier than others. But, you give a benefit of the doubt of just humanity, right? That you'll be passing through this life, and you're not the judge, you're not the final judgment of that person. You're just there to do a job, right? And for me, it was kind of like this sort of token when I come in contact with people, in a sort of spiritual sense of, God is watching me. When I know He knows, and I know that I don't have to be here, and I can do the same thing Frankie did, and I sure as hell don't have to follow in the influences of Frankie, but just in the fact that what my father was doing. But I was not only rewarding him, but I was helping reward my mother. But I had to stay firm in the situation that I was in, because it's too valuable. He was a World War II veteran, and all this other shit was going on, and there was a lot of money, and my little brother Julian was at stake as well. And too many people were after his money, and I had to defend his money, his house, everything he had worked for, because I knew my mother's mental state could be easily adapted, and not adapted, easily abused and submitted to someone just taking whatever they want. And just like they eventually did take whatever the fuck they want. So what happened is I went through my life going through this, and you come in contact with a lot of patients, and you see a lot of them were always begging stuff for me, especially cigarettes, most of them attention, and it never really bothered me. My father used to kind of nag on to me, "Hey, pay attention to me more. You're here for me, not them." And so there's a familiarity of that. But when you're 42 years old, almost 43, the reality and the circumstances of my own health. But it's still interesting, the medical science of this, and the procedures, what they do, and this is what you're supposed to do. This is the formal training you do for this job position, and hopefully you're able to pass, and that's what the evolution of it's been to this very day. And you have that, and but just depending on whatever field, there's different parts of nursing homes, and different parts of, there's luxury nursing homes too. See, the luxury nursing homes, they're probably a lot more easier. Like when I'm thinking of nursing homes, I'm thinking like the ghetto nursing homes. For those who know what the ghetto nursing homes are like that's where I used to go to my father. I used to go to my father, and my father never lived in a nice nursing home. You ever seen those nice nursing homes in the old folks' place live? it was none of that shit. I'm talking about like this was ghetto, like the ghettos in Fort Worth, and these weren't very luxury, nice, looking nursing homes. This is primarily where people just got shuffled to. For the wealthy, they went to these nice nursing homes that you see on TV and shit. They probably pay well, and they're probably much more luxurious and a lot more lenient and more easily more adaptive for the medical CNAs. So that's another option for me as well, if that's what I choose. EKGs are primarily in hospitals. So if I'm an EKG, I could go into a hospital. So let's just say I did EKG. I'd be working among many other different type of medical staff members, which more elite, way more elite, and I'd be way more older than them. And they got their master's degrees, they got their bachelor's degree, and they learned all their shit very young. I'm old, but it's a job. I'm sort of in the atmosphere. I take my lunch break, and to me, it's just a job. Just to focus. It's just there for my money, my paycheck, and an interesting job. And you're doing a rewarding job that is. But in the circumstances where you're coming across, where I'm a lot of notoriety, you put your hands on people, you put these EKGs, or you give them blankets, or you feed them, or you drink them. That's some of the stuff that I really didn't do when I was in nursing homes. But when you see that kind of stuff, you sort of reflect how short your life is, and that all the things that people used to say when go to school, don't waste your youth, don't let them take your youth, don't waste your youth. They say that because they don't want you to be me. And when you could have earned all these knowledge and get a career for yourself, to build a life for yourself, and a career, most of all a career where you go and gave something to yourself mentally. Career, you're a professional, you gave a professional to yourself. So everyone deals with that kind of stuff like that. I'm not necessarily sure that I could probably that I'm not necessarily sure. I really don't think about it that you necessarily deal with seeing people that are you see them, and then you see them leaving in a body bag, and that's the reality of it. And I know that I saw some CNA stuff on here and saying that for them sometimes it got really difficult because they're doing their jobs, and then for someone that they enjoy talking to more than some of the others, all of a sudden you see them talking, and then or whatever, and then within a week you don't know where they are, and then you just see them in a body bag. And that was it. That was life. That was it. That was everything. Everything. The existence of the human life. That was everything. The wishes, the wonders, and all these things, and that we're young and thinking that this mysterious world of death, and these fantasies that you think of what heaven may be like, or what evil was, and the horror movies that you used to watch that you used to think were so scary, and ghost stories and stuff. Realizing that there was no for sure answer. There was never a for sure answer when it resulted to that. There was not a concrete someone returning, I believe in Christ, but in Jesus, but there was nothing that came back. Like in the world of science in this day and age while I was alive, that ever said or documented in the medical field. Said, oh yeah, we got the keys to heaven. This is what you just got to do. This is guaranteed, and yeah, Jesus is in a different dimension. Archangels work in different dimensions or multiple places at one time, and you have a Scottish cheesecake on Thursdays, like there was nothing. But we all fear death, and we all face the reality of the uncertain. And people, you know, people, some people live very gracefully, or some people live very well throughout their lives, not to have been able to harm a lot of people throughout their life trying to get their fantasy world. You know, I've, you watch this on video where people build a fantasy world of like, okay, I'm gonna get this beautiful story, and I can think of a handful of people right now, and you want this sort of glorious story, and you're just gonna cross over like the mediums tell you to, and you're just gonna go to the spirit world. I understand that you have to keep it home and you have to keep it to your, to the land that you're walking on, and I can understand those types of things. I forgot my train of thought. Yeah, so you have I can't even fucking remember right now. I lost my train of thought. You motherfuckers are shooting something at me. There's what was I thinking of? I don't even remember. They keep shooting something at me. I know there's shit. I don't forget shit like this. I'm in the middle of a conversation. You motherfuckers are shooting something at me. And I can hear them making all this commotion like they've already listening to me and they're telling me to move around shit. So anyway, yeah, so you come across these circumstances and, the fantasy world. People end up getting a fantasy world where I'm just going to cross over. I'm just going to go to heaven, and there is people starving to death. You have to understand, you have to keep it on your ground, right? But people are starving to death. People are suffering in such excruciating ways that you think that you were doing good through your life. And really all you did was stay selfish. All you did was stay selfish and contain and kept on finding excuses why to gobble down somebody else's paycheck. Why to gobble down somebody else's suffering and hard earnings and made it about yourself. And it really wasn't you that did that. And you never got punished for it. You went through your life doing it to other people, and you just never got caught. You for some reason, and you just called it a fucking purpose, and it was just because you were just outsmarting people because you didn't want to deal with the suffering. You didn't want the one that didn't want a bad story. So you kept on this fake story all the way down the fucking road, and then you end up in a nursing home. And not to say that you were in a nurse, that you end up your whole life like that. So, but you never know in life. That's the whole thing. You never know the dice that are being thrown on the table. I'm sitting here just making this video, and they're just shooting electronic devices, and I'm totally forgetting what the fuck they're fucking doing to my brain. I'm 42 years old. I'm spitting fucking over 20 years being shot with electronic. I have no existence what a normal intestines and function is without any electronic devices to see what my brain and body would have functioned in it. But it's a job. That's what you're doing. You're just there for a job, and you get a paycheck. You're doing it from, obviously. In my circumstances, this is not like a full-blown career that's ever going to happen. That's died many years ago, and they took that away from me many years ago. They know how to manipulate, steal, and rewire shit. They knew what they did, but it's too late now. And I just take it the best way that I can. Learning and doing good, and what little life I have left, and what was taken away at the magnitude. Not many people it's frustrating because I know for myself I would have been able to go to school. I know if I had had a home, I would not have gotten involved even more in drugs in my 20s, which I didn't just a few times. I just didn't have nothing. You have all this money and things taken away from you from the hard suffering that I did to live in a fucking apartment, to then have all your friends and other people then play me stupid and never get punished, and it's time to go party again. Now it's like all of them they had the opportunities to go to school and the family and all that. All they did is wanted a free fucking ride, and I didn't get that. I didn't get that opportunity. They shitted on me. Like, you're not, hey, let's go to school, let's make something of your life. They're like, here, let me just use for your fucking house, or let me just do some more dope with you. Oh, we're just gonna party because of DJ. Oh, just because of music. Fuck no. Like, it looks beautifully professional. You're with, you having a degree, or having I'm not talking like not even a bachelor's. I'm talking like an associate's or medical assistant. A medical assistant. Certificate. Or degree. Something 8 months, something 10 months. Working, you have care of yourself well. I didn't have any of that shit, and it's a hard thing to deal with the plastic anemia for like a year. It was really bad on me for that last year, and like they didn't give a shit. Any of them had all the time to sit on their ass and go to school and all this money, and I didn't have. They just took everything I had, and nobody cared. It's if you can't ever speak about the suffering that you ever went through, just like many other people, you will never be accounted for that, and you have to be extremely elaborate. And what my mother went through, what she went through, she can't be elaborate about what she went through, and somebody else gobbles that fucking shit down and says, oh, this is what happened. No, that's exactly what fucking happened. As the voice of any of this never got spoken of until it was too late. And there's no punishment. No, you are never going to live a normal life again, you fucking filthy picking ass motherfucker. It ain't none of that shit. Because when you walk into a nursing home, many of these people were the same people you came in contact with when you were younger, except they never got caught. There's Kenneth, that piece of shit right there. Oh, this is this other motherfucker over here. Oh, it's just excuses over here too. But you don't know. You give him benefit of the doubt of just, oh well again. But, it's a different point of view when you're older. It's a different point of view. This is an extremely high-stakes gamble. And I try not to look at it like that. I'm trying not to look like I'm crazy because I'm trying to get into some sort of medical understanding classes. And here I am infected with HIV, and the only person in the United States left of it. And there's just people suffering all over the place. Man, I was like 3 months ago sleeping, for weeks on end, over front of a auto parts store, When I first got here, I was sleeping in freezing temperatures. Nobody gave a shit. How hard it was sleeping underneath that bench out near Carrollton, just a mile down the road from where I used to live. Once again, at 41 years old, back in December, getting 5 hours of sleep. Man, you don't understand how the physical abuse until you finally get there and what that does to you. But it's a different perspective. I don't know if they'll let me work anyway because of how much control they have over my life. I don't know if they'll let me work. The medical situations. I hope I would be able to work on some just 1, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5, a month's assignment maybe in a different city or a different state, and then or whatever that may be, or there's so many different circumstances out there. So, but I'm perfectly okay. I'm telling you, like, earn this depending on how hard it was or whatever. If I get lucky enough to then, man, if I feel like I can get this, I'm just gonna go get the EKG, or maybe I'll just jump on the EKG first. There's also physical therapy that would also help my mother. You know, sort of those types of things. Um, I know they make really good money. But this is not me for fetching out, because working in the medical field, there used to be a lot of hot girls, beautiful women, but they're intelligent, educated. That's very, very, very appealing. Extremely appealing when they're highly educated like that. I mean, they're just something very special, at least, you know, in that understanding. But anyway, I gotta get to bed. It's getting really late. We'll see how it goes. See what happens. I may have to move out of this place and find a different place closer to school. I don't know yet. Depending on where the school's located, depending on time, transportation, I may go to work, try looking for a job here shortly. I don't know. We'll see what happens.